Why is a website about air purifiers publishing a podcast about Google? Well, between September 2023 and March 2024, there were 6 updates to the algorithm that powers Google's search engine. As a result, and in the span of 6 months, thousands of small independent websites like HouseFresh saw the numbers of visitors reaching their sites dramatically reduced to just a handful of people per day. Many indie web publishers had to shut down completely after decades of running. When we first wrote about this back in February 2024, we didn't think that this one article would lead to an invite from Google to a day of brainstorming with their engineers to try and fix whatever is broken. Today, I'm here with Gisele to discuss our experience at the Web Creator Conversation event that took place at the end of October at Google's HQ in Mountain View, California. We will go over the comments we received from some of the engineers in the room, our experience meeting other independent websites who were there, and we'll also share the decisions that we made about the future of HouseFresh as a result of what we learned that day. So this is the first time that I've been in front of the camera with someone else apart from Rodrigo when he walks past. And today we're going to be talking with Gisele Navarro. Gisele is the managing editor here at HouseFresh, and she also does a lot of other things, which I'll let her talk about. But Gisele, do you want to introduce yourself to the people behind the YouTube audience?
Yes. So hi, everybody. If you ever talk to HouseFresh on social media, except for YouTube, you probably will have talked to me. So I'm the person behind our Reddit, our X, our Blue Sky, Instagram, and my main job is to make sure that the content that we publish on the site, and to an extent the videos now, which is a new thing for us, are the best that they can be. And I think that was my day-to-day before the Google thing, which is what we will get into today. But actually I joined HouseFresh in 2022, which was a couple of years after it started. And it was an interesting time for us because we were having a bunch of people transitioning from NeoMam into HouseFresh. But have you ever talked about NeoMam?
I don't think I have, no. I think we're very clear about the fact that NeoMam is the company that owns HouseFresh, but I've never felt, I've not talked about it. So maybe we could use this opportunity. I know when the first post went live, we had a lot of people kind of with gotchas. Hey, these guys are not your mom and pop average air purifier review site. They're actually an agency and they've been doing this for years, as if that would kind of show that our article didn't mean anything because of that. But
so what is NeoMam?
So NeoMam, back I started work straight out of university, worked in SEO agencies. So that's it.
There's a gotcha.
They've got me. And then I think I was at a time when there was a lot of change in SEO. And one of the things that I came across was there was technical SEO, there was keyword research, and then there was this new thing called link baiting or content marketing or whatever different names people gave it. But it basically involved creating content to get attention and to get links and get people looking at your site. And as soon as I did some of that work, I just really liked it. I really hated all the other stuff. I've been open about that for years, found it really boring, but this one really gave me, it sparked something in me. I like the idea of putting your effort into a piece of content and then seeing feedback straight away, whether it's people on dig.com back in the day or Reddit or now with journalists talking about the content that we've created. And I think with NeoMam, it was all about how do we focus on that one thing. So just doing content to get attention, get people to share, get links. And we've focused, nearly over coming up to 12 years now. So we got pretty good at it.
I would say, I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's more like 15 years at this point.
Yeah, probably. It feels,
it feels weird since 2020. It feels weird,
but yeah, it probably is longer. I remember when we hit our 10-year mark and I was like, oh my God, it's been 10 years.
When did this happen?
I thought I was the new upstart always and still think that.
Yeah, I think the thing about NeoMam is, so I joined NeoMam later. never the founder. And in my career, I also had ended up freelancing and working for SEO agencies and figuring it out fairly early on that what I really liked was the creating content thing, which I was very used to because I was a blogger. I had my MySpace and my, I don't know, at the time, Photolog, and, I had my blog spots and my WordPress, and I saw the power of, I could write an article that thousands and thousands of people read. And I remember seeing Neomam's work in the wild and really liking it. And that's when I started working with you. And I guess the thing with Neomam is that we always, in terms of like our clients, we have worked with huge variety of clients. We've done lots of content that was just for internal communications, and we've worked for the UN and UNICEF and the UEFA and all the youth organizations you can think of. But then we have also done this, what people might call like viral content or hero content, for, I don't know, companies that people know now, like, I don't know, Surfshark, say. And along the way, the one thing that has been constant is that our main point of contact on the client side, for the most part, was a technical SEO person.
Yeah.
That's where our budgets were coming from, right? Because it's really nice to create an awesome piece of content, but for us to be able to afford to do that, we had to get paid. And the best way for us to show our value was by getting other websites to share this content and link to our clients. And that put us in this wedge within the SEO industry where
will we be called link builders?
No, link builders, but also the new one is content morons. That's the new one that I just been told like a couple of days ago. So I think we've always been in this weird spot where, I guess personally, and this is me talking about my own career, but I never felt comfortable or welcome, really, to the point where my first SEO conference, and I went to as many SEO conferences as I have fingers, pretty much. And my first one, I was talking to these big guys from Twitter at the time, the big SEO influencers, of which there are many. And when they found out that I used to create content for links, one of them laughed and said, "Oh, I would kill myself if that was to me my job." Which I will never forget that, because I felt so strange. I was so excited to be talking to these people, and they were laughing about what I did for a living. And I think that brings us to the place in which we're in now, that probably can explain why did we do HouseFresh? Like, why did we decide to go into HouseFresh? How did that happen? How did this agency that makes content for the web decide to have a website about air purifiers?
Yeah, and I think a combination of what we were doing with the agency, we were seeing that things were changing, and anyone who works in this space will know that. Back in the glory days of Epiphany Search and Distilled, there were these many agencies creating these really amazing pieces of content that's still alive today, that was where the focus of the industry was. And fast forward to today, or even the last couple of years, we've moved away from those pieces of content and more on focusing on the end result, which is just getting the link. And any person who's kind of done this for a long time will know that, you can miss that bit out. And if anything, things get a lot easier. Clients don't want to sign off on content. They don't want to create something new. They would look, their personal preference would always be like, just give me the links and I don't have to deal with it. If I go back to when I first started in SEO, my link building process was log into a website, text link ads, order the link, choose the anchor text. And that's like the perfect role. And sadly, I was hoping we'd come to a point where even just outreaching would be seen as manipulation, and it would just be a pure play of who's got the best content. And we're so far from there. We're actually now at a point where people can get the links by just saying things in emails, not having a piece of content on their website, not having a methodology that stands up, that has rigor, just getting the links, getting them out the door, get a new client, get one in. And I think we've gone back to that spammier time mainly at fault, as we will cover in the rest of this podcast, is with Google and the changes that they've made and the changes that to the documentation and different things like that, and what they've chosen to highlight and what they haven't. But that doesn't change the fact that, yeah, an agency like ours, I think we described it as like we're going extinct. So
yeah, in 2019, it was August 2019, and we made that decision of we are not going to be an agency forever. Up to that point, a number of agencies had closed their doors,
Yep.
and we wanted to go in our own terms. And we have an amazing team, and back then we had a much bigger team of really talented specialists who do the best. They create the best content you can think of. And I remember we were thinking, well, how about we create our own website, and we just support our websites with the type of content that will get loads of millions of people, but also we get to, for once, control everything about it. And I think that's how HouseFresh came about. It was a topic that you already had experience in, you cared about personally.
Yeah, it was a website I originally got into many years, even before Neomam. And yeah, it was originally just a site that I just saw an opportunity. But actually, when I dove deep into it, I read lots about it. I got caught up into the world of what air purifiers, what it means. Like the fact that it is an industry where there is so many myths, truths, marketing tricks, like so many bad things that happen that you just wouldn't expect that from an outsider to think that it is actually really interesting. And what was lacking, and I knew it was lacking, was a true site that was unbiased, independent, that did test lots of different units and filled that information gap that exists. And obviously we had the idea for going into HouseFresh in 2019. Something happened in 2020 we all know about, and that became, it was even a bigger issue. The fact that, air ventilation, purification could have been a very, very useful thing for many of us to have at that time. Most people wouldn't have had that access to that information, so we didn't have it. So I knew it was important. I knew that as much as I'd love to believe that the world is going to end in utopia, the reality is probably air quality is going to get worse in countries around the world. So this could be something that we could have to it's a small niche, and I think many people have talked that it isn't massive money, even probably when you're ranking at the very top, but you have an opportunity to do something quite big. So that was what excited us.
Yeah, and I think that's around the time when I came about. So I think we missed something, which is little, but might help give context. But we're married.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that.
And this is our basement.
Yes, she is my wife and the mother of my children.
Yes, and
our children.
All the air purifiers, they started arriving in my house when I wasn't working at HouseFresh, and I didn't know much about air purifiers. And they would just come in boxes and boxes and boxes, and they were everywhere, and the filters were everywhere. And I remember trying to find spots in the house. I didn't understand half of what was happening, or why this one was different from that one, or why does it have to be so big? Like, that was my big one. Why does it have to be so big? But I think over the years, those initial years, I learned a lot about it. And actually, I have severe asthma. And after having the air purifiers in our house, particularly in my bedroom, I remember saying to Danny, I wish this existed when I was a little kid, because I spent my childhood sick and in hospital. And actually, it would have made a huge difference. And now we have children and they also have asthma, and one of them has severe dust allergies, and the air purifiers make a huge difference to their life. So I think that's around that time where it was getting bigger, there were more units, the website was doing well, Google started rolling out these product review updates, which were meant to highlight websites that within the product review space that actually had first-hand data, that had insights that were unique.
Benchmarking, like methodologies.
Yeah, real methodologies, clear methodologies. And our site was doing better. So that's where we started with our phase 2, which was, okay, we're going to grab some people from the Neomam team, and they're going to start moving to HouseFresh. And They all got air purifiers, they all got into it, they all learned about it because we were serious that this is where we're going. And yeah, and around, I think this was my second year, so 2023, September 2023, and that's when it was like a wave after wave of Google updates started to roll out. You didn't know that one just happened and then there was another one announced. And one after the other, we started dropping and losing traffic from Google, which, by the way, drives like 90% of the traffic to the web. So actually losing traffic from Google in the context of being a website means just not having people seeing your website. So,
and we made now what is obvious to us a foolish decision to just focus on the website.
Yes.
Because we felt that we have experience writing for the web, we have experience getting attention on the web. We thought that would be our best place. Obviously, if I could go back in time, I'd do something different, but that definitely set us up to the fact that when we lost our search traffic, that was it. There was no...
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of other avenues for people to find us. I mean, we had already started building a community on what now is X, and that was really helpful, and people were talking about us, recommending us. Manufacturers were also starting to share our reviews, or at least quotes of them that they liked.
I think our reviews themselves started to generate attention for ourselves, because people were seeing them and going, and people who knew what they were doing were going, okay, so these guys are having a proper crack at this. And I think that
was great to see.
Yeah.
But it didn't help us.
It didn't help us. It didn't matter that we had a brand within the space of air purification, because that was the big feedback we got, especially after the HCU update after our first post. It was all about, you need a brand. If you haven't got a brand, then you don't really
compete.
Deserve to compete. Yeah. But what I would say is that we did have a brand, and Danny Sullivan said that to us many times.
Who is Danny Sullivan?
Search liaison for Google. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Now I feel like I know him because I met him in real life. But he said, we do have a brand, and we knew that. We knew we had a brand. The reality was that the algorithm, compare that to someone like Better Homes and Garden, a magazine that's been running since the 19th century. It's no competition if the algorithm is just looking at pure raw, how many people search for that versus that. 3 million versus 50,000, it doesn't matter. But the point is, one is a much bigger entity.
That's what we learned, actually, because when the update started happening, we didn't know what was wrong. We went on our website. We actually made some tough decisions, because we were like, okay, well, maybe we need to rethink the entire brief, and we need to rethink the layout of the pages, and we started really second guessing what we were so comfortable in, because we have actually honed our skills as creators for the web for decades. And that was tough, because you're trying to do your best work, but at the same time, you're feeling like you're not good enough, and it's not good enough. And the fact that the update was called Helpful Content Update meant that then our content wasn't helpful. Yeah. And the fact that when that update got announced, they talk about reducing spam, it means that our content and our website is spam. And that's hard when you actually care about the content you create. So that was one hard element. But then the other problem, or what we started noticing, which is what Danny was talking about now, is that many of these sites that were taking our spot, that we have held for years at the top of searches like best budget air purifiers, they were all these big publishers. And in some cases, publishers that come from print, like Better Homes and Garden, or Real Simple, or Forbes. In other cases, sites that we were so shocked at how they're not even home sites, which you could argue when an air purifier you use in your house, I guess. But then suddenly we see BuzzFeed, we see Rolling Stone. It was just Billboard. Like suddenly we were seeing our content being outranked by these big legacy media brands, where these logos. And then when we would read the content, it was so obvious to us that, one, they are definitely not testing. They don't know what they're writing about. Whoever this person is has never seen an air purifier in real life. And that's when we started following these threads. We started talking to other independent site owners, finding out that in their spaces also they were getting outranked by the same site. So like Forbes was outranking us for, best purifiers for pets, and it was also outranking a website about anime movies. It's like, how can this doesn't make any sense? And that's when we wrote our first article.
Yeah, I think because at that point, the frustration had just been building up for a long time, where we would be spending so much time obsessing about how do we make our reviews the very best they are. And some of them involved like investigations that lasted months, involved buying sample units from factories in China, like spending an inordinate amount of time and money to make a review. And then I'd see, Tom's Guide, and they say, oh, this air purifier gets 2 stars and doesn't even have a con, and none of the data doesn't even match up with the other data that they've shared. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And honestly, I think before all this, the fact is we had an agency that focused on signals that Google gives, with the idea being that, look, link building gets a bad name, but what if you did it for real? What if you did create the best content? What if you did get the attention of the biggest websites on the web? So I had a belief that Google eventually, it might take some time, would figure it out. And I think it was one day when I just said to you, and I said, look,
we have to do something.
We have to do something. And I just started writing some thoughts down, because this isn't right. We can't keep pushing and making more helpful, more satisfying content if when I'm seeing the board, there's players on the board that aren't even putting in the even most minimal of effort, but they're part of a major publishing house, or they have a brand that is well known. But it shouldn't be like that. All the communication that we've had from Google was keep doing it for the user. Keep creating the best content you possibly can, and we will catch up. And I think at a certain point, I couldn't keep believing that. And that's when.
Yeah, and I think up to that point as well, let's be honest, Google didn't, their messaging and their particular certain search liaisons, they were very strong about, well, it's not helpful then. And actually, those niche sites should just disappear.
Yeah.
And that was one thing, like why we spent so much time trying to write that title of that first article and defining, what we want to say, which ended up being how Google is killing independent sites like ours. And we brought this idea of like, there is an independent site. Like when you're looking at the web and everything is owned by a media company, what's left in the middle, most cases, when it comes to a web publication, it's an independent publication. And up to that point, every website and everybody who had come forward and said, I don't feel my website should have been hit, and this doesn't seem right, had been shushed by search liaisons and by the SEO community, thrown at them the word niche. You are a niche site, and they're middlemen.
Yeah.
They're not supposed, this is not helpful, you're spammy. And when we decided to write the article, we knew that would bring a lot of attention to the site. But we were confident enough in our content to say, right, like bring it on. Like go and say the same things you've been telling all these other independent sites. Say that about my website. Go tell the world the way that you are doing it in this X threads and whatever, that actually if only we had paid for your SEO audit and we had created some actual helpful content, we wouldn't be in the situation. I think that it changed something because it got the attention of, I think one of the first write-ups about the article was Neiman Lab.
Yeah.
And they shared it with the journalism community, I guess. And they just said, like, this small air purifier website is saying that this is happening. And then all the journalists just went in to see what was going on. And it grew and grew and grew.
I think it was a combination of obviously what we're saying in the article, and then for them to look at the site as a whole. And I knew, because we'd seen many people had come out and said, look, my site's, I'm trying to I'm doing the best I can. I feel like my content is much better than anyone else, yet I'm not getting, the search engine is just not seeing me at all. And yeah, the standard feedback from the community, the SEO community was, well, if it says it's not ranking, then it probably isn't good. Not even probably. It isn't.
Oh, you had a good run.
You had a
That
good
would be
run. You had a
one.
good thing, and I think this. It partly because yes, they bucketed every single person. You're either Forbes and all the great things that Forbes are doing, and you can go back and look. Like there's entire webcasts, presentations about how great Forbes is and why you should do everything like them. And then there's the niche site guys hawking courses, scamming people, and there is no way to be any good in that, which is after, like, if you say it, 15 years of SEO, that is the standard operating procedure, sadly, that everything is either right or wrong and there's nothing in between. And I think
it's a very binary.
Yeah, it's very binary. And I feel for a lot of many of those site owners who came out, because it's hard to make a site. You put your effort in, you try to do the best you can. And yes, you've done a better job on certain things. Of course you could. Could there be some faults and some issues that could be fixed? Yes, there is. Especially if you don't have the experience and you're just a creator, then yeah, there's going to be holes that they can pick, and they can be then they can be so confident that that is the reason you're ranking, because you're not ranking.
Yes.
So that's the proof. There's no thing.
Yeah, and I think that's where, when we wrote that article, one of the things that made me laugh a few times, of a few journalists that covered it, and then some YouTubers that covered it, and they said things like, how is this small air purifier website? How can they speak SEO so fluently?
Yeah.
And how can they explain these things so clearly? And this is why, like, we could do that, because we have experience of nearly 2 decades working with SEO people and working within Google search results and understanding, like, I know the difference between Google search right now and 5 years ago, because I've been looking at search not just as a user. And I think when we had that first meeting with Google, which just came out, it was a few weeks after our second article, which we published a few weeks after the algorithm update of March that destroyed our website. So we went from having, I think we were getting like maybe 1,000.
I think about 1,200 a day.
1,200 a day to like 100.
Yeah, sometimes
Most
less.
of them coming to read the David versus Goliath HouseFresh article. They were not coming to read about air purifiers. And we talked about site reputation abuse, which was a new spam policy that Google incorporated into their announcement of the March update. And that talked about this idea of third parties creating content on these big, reputable websites like Forbes, for example, and just basically taking advantage of the fact that within the index, they are a very important website. So they could write about anything and they could just rank. And I think up to that point, they didn't need to say that. They didn't need to say, hey, Forbes, just don't just rent out your domain for somebody else to come and sell CBD gummies. I think we were surprised they had to come and say it, right? Because it's like, it gets to a point where it seems completely unethical. And they had to come and say that. And then there was a big backlash around how they implemented that spam guideline, because usually, they have a spam guideline and then they will do manual actions, which is when Google decides, this website, it's out of the index. And they send like a message within a search console, which is like a backend that you get to know how your website is doing, saying you've been issued a manual action. And that didn't happen the way that I guess everybody was expecting would happen. And we wrote that article and we were quite upset about what was going on. And the thing that we gave in both articles was example upon example, screenshot upon screenshot. We shared Wayback Machine URLs, because as we were pointing out what these big publishers were doing, they were going and changing it. So then we had to go and revert back and replace URLs with Wayback Machine to show that when we said that they said this or they did this, they actually did, because they were rewriting history. And that's when we got invited to the first call with Google, which was an hour call. And it was just Danny Sullivan, who's the search liaison, Brandon from RetroDodo, which is another one of the websites that came out to say it was happening to them too, and me, and then a black screen with what's with some emojis floating every now and again, which was basically a live stream to the engineers. And we answered some questions with Brandon about how we create content and what do we do to review. And I guess what they wanted to find out is, how can a person know that you are for real? How can a person know that you're for real? So we talked for an hour about that. And it was just us talking. It wasn't a two-way conversation. But Danny was asking the question, we would answer the question, next question. And we ran out of time. There was supposed to be a Q&A at the end, but we ran out of time. So at the end, Danny ended up sending a question via email, which was, how can a person know that a website is giving them bad advice or trying to sell a bad product that is just sponsored for the sake of making a higher commission, not because it's a good product. Which I guess it was very telling. And I gave them a lot of examples of how in the air purifier space you can know.
Yeah, it's very easy because there's so many data points, and we'll talk about it later at the meeting that I did attend, but they obviously got their head around that there was so many different points of data that could show very easily that someone hadn't done the required effort for a real review or a real best of guide. And I think obviously from that meeting,
Yes.
we kind of bring us to the
August
update, and then we will show, I'm sure, on screen now the Google Trends. And we were at the time on holiday. Luckily I don't have to check my own site. I could just go on Twitter and Glenn.
People talk about it.
Especially when it's not as good when they're saying, "Oh my God, it's still bad." But Glenn Gabe said, and I remember seeing it, "Oh, HouseFresh is showing some signs of recovery," and I was like, oh, "He's saying he better have something to back this up, because if he's got me excited to go and check." And when I checked on Clicky, it was clear to me. In the same way it was clear when we lost 90%. It was saying that we were, something had changed, as in across the site, whether it's the reviews or the best of guides, something was happening. Traffic was up, and I kind of just spent a bit more time just to double check, because I didn't want to get Gisele excited. But then I calmly just came to her and said, "Look, we're kind of back." Obviously, we weren't back to where we were. Search has changed. There's a lot more ads, a lot more products pushed, so it was obviously going to be lower, and we'd also killed a lot of pages as a way of just, best practice of, obviously Google doesn't like us, so we just take out pages, and especially pages where they didn't generate revenue for us, was like, well, we'll just kill them. And so we were obviously a lot smaller site, so even coming back, it wouldn't be as big. But from my perspective, is that we were now back in the rankings, especially for those reviews of products that we categorically knew ours were the best reviews on the web and probably ever will be, because we'd put the time in, we'd investigated. And clearly we'd shown those signals to Google at some point that also the users were very satisfied with that. That's usually in the case where we do reviews of bad air purifiers.
Yeah, that was the most important thing, I think, which at the time, between those months that we were not ranking, our reviews of products like the Molecule Air Mini,
the Rainbow Air,
the Rainbow Rainmate, the ROV, units that
big sellers
that were not really that good, and they were way better alternatives, but that at the time were pumping in a lot of advertising money. So they were showing at the top of Amazon, and I think that's an easy way to find a unit that maybe you shouldn't trust, is go to Amazon and see who's at the top, pumping a lot of money. I'm not saying it's always the case, but it is the case a lot of the time. So we had these reviews, and we were the only ones saying, look, just don't buy this, just don't buy it. And we were not ranking, and a lot of people bought units that...
Yeah, because this is the thing as well. They said at this event that there is no site classifier. It was clear that we had a site classifier. We didn't in the original.
What does that mean, a site classifier?
So the idea that your domain or your website as a whole has a force on it that's stopping any page rank, versus the standard practice and the way that they say it works is that they just identify a certain page. That page is not performing well for whatever reason. They will reduce the ranking of that page, but it won't affect other pages on your website. So that's kind of that's how it should work. Now, it was clear, and you can see in our Search Console that that core update that happened in March affected everything. And that's how I knew it was a site-wide classifier, because there were, like I say, there were reviews that we had done that no one had looked at that were categorically the best, and they were now being pushed down. And in Google, you only need to be pushed down a handful of positions to no longer have anything. So right now, you go on a page on Google search, you'll see a block of ads, you maybe see a block of product, then you'll see maybe the one, and then maybe another ad, and then people also ask, and then another thing, and then a block of products, and then you get to position 2 or 3 or 4. So if you go from position 3 to position 6, it might not seem that bad, but in today's modern Google, that's it, game over. There's no more people viewing that and finding it out. And yeah, I felt terrible because I put the time in to make these amazing reviews that like did the thing. It exposed that yes, these products are not good. They're being sold to you. They're everything about them has been designed to sell really well. And because the fact is, if you buy an air purifier and it doesn't work, how do you know? You don't. Yeah. That's the truth. Like if you have, unless you have a laser quality sensor, then you can't test it, and no one's going to be doing that. So
no, and I think
it's very easy market to just push subpar products.
And one of whilst we were nowhere to be found, we had another air purifier brand filing for bankruptcy, which was Okaizo.
Yep.
And we had the only review of a product that had been pushed heavily on TikTok and on Instagram with ads. Which you probably have seen, those videos of like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And they open an air purifier and there's a bunch of hair and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that. Yeah, you shouldn't, because it's not true.
It's fake.
It's fake, 100%.
No air purifier.
But they put a lot of advertising money into that, and people were going and searching and buying this thing. And we made the one review there was to say, hey, don't. And that was nowhere to be found, because definitely there was a site classifier. Definitely our website was put in a box where there's lots of websites that are still there. And the users were searching for a review, and they were given like, USA Today says, this is the best air purifier since sliced bread and it's 10% off today. And they couldn't find our review. And then when we had to shoot the YouTube video about how Okaizo went out of business, I was so angry. I was like, I can't believe that we were surfing the wave of warning people and we couldn't, because we were put in a box. And I said all this to Google.
Yeah.
I explained all this. I told them about the Okaizo. I said to them very clearly, you have a hard job. This is a very, very, very difficult job, but it's your job. So you fix it. There's nobody else who can fix it. An August core update came up. We got a little bit of an improvement. We started to see some growth. And right as that happened, we get the invite to go to California, which is a very far away place.
To here especially, yeah.
Yes. And it also meant we would have to, first of all, I got the invite, just me. I got the invite for myself. And my first email reply was, okay, I'll think about it, but will it be possible for Danny to come? Where the answer was, okay, but we have no budget. So actually we paid for your flights.
Yeah. But they did say that I could attend the event. It wasn't just
so he was allowed to come. So then it was just the two of us. We ended up deciding to do it. And we were lucky that my brother, Rodrigo, who is the person behind the camera right now, he was here visiting and he could stay with our children.
Yep.
And we did a lightning trip to California, where we left on a Monday and we're back on a Thursday morning.
Yeah, Thursday morning.
Which was terrible for jet lag, and I don't recommend. And that was it was a very strange, surreal experience.
But it was an easy decision to make to go, obviously because we'd already been given a little bit of at least a show that it wasn't just purely words, there was action. Gisele had the call with them. Things had changed, especially changed in our space. So if you go into air purifiers now, you'll see a lot of smaller other sites doing better. And I don't think all of the rest of them were, as the SEO said, complaining or going on the New Yorker or BBC or any of the other many. But they all benefited from the fact that I think Google took a closer look at this space and for good reason, decided that actually it makes more sense to have sites that have tested. But I knew that going to the event itself wasn't going to be something that would help HouseFresh, but I knew that I wanted to, if I could do something to help the web a bit to be better for everyone else, then we should go. For the people, many of the creators that we've met that, yeah, didn't have maybe the voice that we had at that time, to bring their examples. But just as important for me was to getting the chance to meet the other creators.
Oh yeah.
And we'd already had really good conversations with
Some of them.
some of them already, and I was aware of some of them. So to me, it was in the fact that Google could put this on for us all to meet. Fine, it would be better if it was in Manchester, but it wasn't, and it was nice weather, right?
Yeah,
but
it was nice weather.
I think it would have been worth it for that investment to meet with these, and I definitely think that was,
sure.
and also curiosity, going to there and seeing what the event was going to be like what were they going to say? I've never met a Google engineer in my life, so what were they like and all the rest of it. I think naturally just curiosity of what did they want to say as part of this conversation.
Yeah, and I think once we were there, and up to that point, we knew we had 3 minutes. All of us will have 3 minutes to address the Googlers in the room. And I think we spent a lot of time trying to make sure that these 3 minutes we were saying the right things, and we really got in our heads. In particular, I know I did. I just kept writing, like even on the plane, I was like, oh, I think I changed my mind. And it was really emotional and very intense. I think others have shared really good recaps of the day, so we're going to put the links of their articles, and there's a couple of interviews that also happen in podcasts, so we're going to put the links here so you can see. We're not going to go through the day, but
because they've already done a great job of it.
Yeah, they have, and there's no reason.
It makes you feel like you were there.
There's no reason. If anything, all we can add is whether we did like or not like the lunch, which we didn't. We did like the breakfast. But the one thing that I would say that was quite different for us compared to other creators is that we had this one engineer who very early on in the day, she just came to say, you are HouseFresh. And she just stuck with us. And every break, lunch break, every opportunity to talk, she was there. And I think now I look back and I wish I had more time to talk to other people. But I was also incredibly overwhelmed, and just having the one that would come talk to you, I was like, well, this is easier than me having to go. But this gave us some unique insight, maybe into just this one engineer. But we got to actually be very vocal with this one person, and it got to a point where it got a little like emotional, and she was like, oh, I'm just trying my best, and we were trying to explain, like, we're not trying to attack you personally, like, you are just Google. So when we talk to you and we say things, then we learned that actually she's part of the team that is trying to fix the reviews, broad review issue. So I can see why she would be like,
no, and
I'm trying my best.
I think like reading the other experiences, I think we got probably more attention from, like, I was able to kind of have all that like venting about how Google had destroyed it with this one engineer way before, even by the end of lunch, I'd already kind of got around to her position on this, which I think makes a lot of sense. It's like I feel that they clearly did, and the other engineers in the room, they want to help. Now, obviously, they are one piece in a larger structure, but I think they wanted to get over to me as like, look, let's assume, like, look, you have to just trust me that I'm here to help. I'm not here to, and these.
It's not a PR move.
It's not a PR move, and these were true engineers, real engineer, and they weren't trying to, at least sensing from their body language and the way they were talking, they weren't. It wasn't an activity to keep us. Maybe there was an element to charm us, but there wasn't. It didn't feel fake, and it felt like they did really care, and they'd read all of our posts and many of the information on HouseFresh as well. It was very strange to have people seeming to know a lot about air purifiers, which in average day around here, and most people don't even know they exist. So it was a very strange experience, and obviously as a, it was nice to feel like they cared, and certainly that was helpful. But what it meant was that when we went into the brainstorming, I was already in that mindset of like, okay, these guys are on board. They just need, similar to what you, when you had your first conversation, they just need our help in coming up with, similar to what you did in the first thing, like how do they see the difference between a site that is purely just in it to scale and make as much money from search in the shortest amount of time versus actual creators like the people in the room. But I think because many of the other people hadn't had that experience, it was harder because they were still in that stage of, look, I just want you to know how badly this has hit us. So it would have been maybe, yeah, it would have been good if we'd had, maybe all of us had that more like one-on-one time, but obviously there's only a limit to what they can do.
Yeah, I think also something that became clear quite early on was that they are so compartmentalized inside of Google. Like the people that work with obviously the ads and search different. The ones that do the ranking of this type of content are different from the ones that do the ranking of this other type of content, and all the different features and boxes and things you see, they all belong to different teams. So there was a lot of, oh, I can't do anything about that. And yeah, I also don't like that. But they can't do anything about it. So that, it was good that I figured it out pretty early on. So then I didn't waste my time anymore just showing like, look, another way to fix it is just to not drown us in a carousel of products.
Yeah. And that's not something they can do.
There's not something they could do
at the higher levels. And
we don't know how high, but we know it wasn't the people in that room that could control that. But I think it's interesting when then we chatted to all the other creators, and in different groups there were different types of roles as well. We had, I think they were all engineers, but in other groups they had product managers, and they were completely unaware of, I don't know, how the YouTube creator program works or the analytics that we get in YouTube. We just kept saying you should show us more data and then we can make good decisions. And they just didn't know how it was, or at least they didn't want to talk about it. If maybe they did know and they didn't want to talk about it, but everybody consistently seemed to just be in their world. And that was kind of strange to see. I guess now I understand. I know that I know it's like that. It makes sense. Maybe there is a reason as well. Maybe it's better if tomorrow there's a DOJ case that they're also separate and they can't piece things together.
And it makes sense. They really, Danny did push at the event that, yeah, the paid search can't pressure them. And that seems to be...
Well, they pressure them enough to take half the...
Well, but I think it's like the decision of this, probably what it was like, yeah, 5, 6, 8 years ago, they were the owners of the 10 blue links whenever we had that. And then over time that has degraded. And so, but they are the people who can decide where those organic listings are. Now, obviously now in 2024, that is a much smaller percentage of the first page of the page that Google provides. But that is all they can do. And I think that was clear to us. It was like, well, so when you imagine, you think, well, look, just get rid of all the ads, get rid of all this, do that. And I think what we both learned was that, yeah, it obviously is a lot more complex than that. The fact is that one decision, I think they mentioned it, is like, well, how will the neighbors react? And with neighbors, and that must be like a Google word of like the other sites adjacent that are doing good things, by making a change, say, to the algorithm for one particular thing that's good, say, for air purifiers, may mean that all these, the example they gave was like gift guides. So I was saying, look, for best of, doesn't it make sense that every single product they have at least shown they've reviewed it? So there should be a review that exists. I'll be honest, I just assumed this would be what Google would have in his head, like surely, but they were surprised by that. And I think that the pushback they gave was like, well, what about gift guides? That, you know, do they have to have reviewed every single possible gift for a 7-year-old kid to be able to put a best of? And obviously, I don't think that is the case, but you know, I feel like that is a different type of keyword. But I do think for like a product keyword, whether it's the best air fryer, best boots, best skateboard, like it's just logic. Anyone can understand that logic that they would have reviewed it, right? And I think one of the big issues that I had with the original with the original article was that that's what these big media publishers were doing. They were able to produce best guides with no evidence of testing, and not even evidence that they hadn't tested. So that was the clever thing, is that they didn't have a review that you could say, oh, look, that proves it, because they just didn't do it. And Google doesn't seem to, I don't know if it still will be the case, they don't have anything in there. But I think that's any of those simple ideas that we'd propose of like, why don't you just do this? And they're like, well, what about the spammers?
Yeah, that was another thing
bad
that I think
actors
became clear, like, which is, I feel like they are losing the spam wars. Obviously, spam has always existed. It evolved. Generative AI added a complete extra layer of complexity to it and scalability. And it was strange to whoever we would talk and whatever brainstorm, whatever idea, whatever, the first thought was always, but what about the bad actors? What about the bad actors? What are they? Are they going to do this? They're going to do that. And I remember having a conversation with this one engineer, and I said to her, like, but don't you have a spam team? Why can't you just let the spam team enforce spam guidelines and update spam guidelines after the fact? Like, but you're just trying to do something to better the search without, otherwise, you're constantly you're thinking about both sides, and you're never going to move anywhere, or any changes you're going to make are going to be so, flimsy or just basic that actually they're not going to make a big difference, or a big enough difference. They're going to fix the problem that there's thousands of websites in a box right now. And, every single one of them said, of these people, I had the same conversation with another engineer who was from Germany, and then I had the same conversation with Danny, and they would all say, oh, if you were to see how bad it is, like, you think the SERPs are bad, you think that the pages are bad, you don't know how bad it is.
And I can imagine, if you see it, the fact that, we are in a world where you can connect an AI to any of the generative AI systems and just publish en masse. But again, I think that was for us, it feels like they should more have a focus on how to do it right. And I think it brings me to one of the other examples when I mentioned about doing the reviews, and they were like, well, what if the big media companies just do reviews then? And I said, great, like, good. I want them to do that. I want them to at least show that they've done reviews. The examples where I've seen it, where they have done reviews, it's very easy to see they haven't done it. And whether it's easy for a human or easy for an algorithm, it will do. And I'd rather they do that. And if the worst happens, and the fact is these reviews are so good and they're better than HouseFresh, so be it. Like, we will move away. But I wouldn't just have a situation where it's like, well, just because they can do it, that's why we shouldn't go down that route. And
we said something that we talked about a few times was just this raising the bar. There is a degree of spamming that has to do with not actually wanting to do the thing. It's like the hack is, how can you get away without, how can you do it 3 times faster or 3 times cheaper or 3 times more, but not truly going through the excruciating pain of actually having to do the thing. So anything that the algorithm could do to make it harder for these people to actually so easily breeze into a position with AI content or whatever, it would be good for the web as a whole. And also it will put off lots of spammers who are just in it because it's easy. And I think we became this laughing stock of the black hat community, like the dark side of SEO community or whatever, because it was like, oh, look at them, they actually believed in it and they put all this time. And imagine being HouseFresh, like, we had been laughed at so much over the months because we actually did the thing. And I was like, oh, so stupid, they did the thing. Yeah. They thought it would happen. And it felt like that. I think being in that room and being with others who also care, and then you realize that we didn't do it because of Google, we did it because we wouldn't do it any other way. And that was, it was reaffirming to be surrounded by our creators and be able to discuss this. But in that room, it was obvious that Google needed our help. That the engineers didn't have as much knowledge of what's happening in the search results. that they didn't have that much knowledge of the specific sectors in which we were. Like, we were broken into, you had the travel sites and you had entertainment, which were like video games and movies and TV. And we were all broken into these spaces. And I think they didn't know enough about how bad it is. Like, the people who were in the travel group, they didn't know that actually TripAdvisor is ranking for any destination search with AI pages. And that is obvious to anybody who is in that space. So I think us being there and sharing everything we shared, and everybody shared their examples, it definitely gave them enough to start looking for what algorithmically could happen. And one of the things that these engineers said multiple times was, how can a machine find out? How can a machine find out? So I mean, they just rolled out a new update, and we started seeing that some small sites are actually getting a little bit of a bump, and that's good. Like, maybe we did offer some good insight throughout the last year across all of us. But if I had to take one lesson from going there, is that you can't just build on Google. And you can't trust Google will not close the ecosystem. I think up to this point, I started using Google because it was better. Like, I used to use all these other search engines, and then I decided to use Google because it was cleaner and better, and it seemed to organize information better. And I remember still at the beginning being like, oh, if I want some fresh new stuff, I'll go to Yahoo because it has more like articles. If I'm doing some more research, then I will use Google. And over time, Yahoo turned to crap. Google became the big thing, and we all trusted it to do the thing they said they would do, which is organize the world's information, make it accessible for all. And you knew that you would search for anything, and Google will show you a good selection of options for that thing you were searching for. And you could even search with quotation marks, and it would search for exactly the thing you were searching for. And it was great, but and I think a lot of businesses have been built on the security of the existence of Google as a platform through which you can access other websites. So it's a starting point, right? It's the place where most people start their searches for anything. They don't even have to go to Google. They just open the browser, they just type in there, and then suddenly they're in Google because of defaults. And we have been called stupid for not diversifying our sources of traffic and just relying on Google. And I think now I look back and I'm like, yeah, we were stupid, and we would be even more stupid if after this we didn't do that. If we came from that meeting saying, oh, but Google has a seat at the table, and they were all so nice, and they had their best interests at heart. But actually, we know now that it can just disappear in a second. So that would be my number one lesson, really. Like, there's no just trusting Google.
No, for sure. And I think that, and this is probably other examples of creators, is, we built the site, we started doing the reviews, we looked at the information that we'd get from Search Console. We used that information to say, well, yeah, let's invest more, let's hire people, Google is telling us this is a good thing to do. And then for that to be like at a certain point just switched off, you can never go back from that. No. I think any of the other creators feel the same. Like, it has a massive effect on you as a person, and I think Morgan shared that really well. But also as a business owner, it's like you can't build a long-term property in a casino if they can take the chips at any point. And I think the mistake I had was always believing in Google as the
entity of the
dungeon master of the game, and they would eventually. And I have a good to back that up. Like, when we first started Nearman, I was fighting to get people to invest in the type of work we did, and I was competing with people selling guest posts for 150, 200 quid, and that obviously to me felt wrong. It's like, well, I've created a piece of content that someone wants to share, compared to a guest post that's just put on a website in exchange for money. That can't be right. And And Google did get involved. They came in with originally Panda and then Penguin, and they made big changes to the search algorithm that at least that type of activity was curtailed. Like before that, you'd get any big brand, didn't matter who they were, they would be spending a good proportion of their money on paid links or what have you. So I suppose, again, I would blame them for the product review updates. When I read that product review update, I said to you, this is it. Google knows, they care. It's become an issue now that people are finding reviews of products that are not being tested and thoroughly, and they're doing something. And whoever worked on that, they were doing a good job. But as we learned at our meeting, these are just individual people. Like there is other people within the organization that have their own objectives and their own things that they want to see from the Google search engine that in all reality don't match up. So if you see the original wording for the HCU update, they mentioned 45%. No, they said originally they thought 40% of spam had been reduced, and then it was 45% that was actually meant it was a lot better. And they had no idea that they'd wiped out all of these sites. Now, how is that possible? And
well, I think one of the things they explained, and they went at lengths to explain, is how thorough they are with their data and how they use search quality raters, who are these people that get given 2 pages of results. One with like the one that is now, and the other one with the changes that they are planning on making. And they get to look at the website that is ranking now and the website that would rank, and go through this checklist of 260 pages, I think they said.
I think they mentioned, it was a massive document.
Crazy big document. And they get to tell whether they think, these random people, if this is a better result or a worse result. And asking about, it became clear that these are not people that have knowledge of the topic for the most part. I think they did. I think
that was the key thing. So with your money or your life, they will have expertise.
What is your money or your life?
Your money is your life is the things that
Health.
Your health or major spend like mortgages, cars, things that if you read a review of this is the best mortgage and it turns out that it's just a scam, then you'll really have a massive effect. So Google obviously knows that certain areas are things that they shouldn't just leave to non-experts. But for everyone else who isn't in these areas, which I would argue air purifier is, if anyone from Google's listening, please tag it and we can have some experts look at the sites.
And then it's not going to work because they're going to say we don't have an expert doctor, MD, signing off on the things.
Well, as long as we have an expert of air purifiers, I don't mind, because they will see that our stuff is good, and I'm confident with that. But the point being is that I think it was clear to me from the timings of the search quality, these guidelines of the raters matched up to the things getting worse. And I think it makes sense. Like even if it's 160 pages, you can't expect a average. And I imagine many of these people are fairly low wage people that have just been thrown into a SERP. And yeah, most people, as you see with most SEOs, they can't look past the pinstripe. So they go in and they see Forbes, they see Home and Gardens or House Beautiful or anything, and they go, this is great, this is amazing. And they don't need to spend any more time, because actually going through, like we can do it now. That's what we did with our articles. We showed with clear examples where the tricks were being played. And many of the tricks were very complicated and hard. And you can't expect someone who's earning, I don't know, $20 an hour or project cost that they do to expect that they're the people who are going to find out because that's what they use the quality raters for. They made this clear. They don't use the quality raters to change the algorithm, which is good. Otherwise it'd be even worse. What they do is they use it to test it, to test the changes that they may have and to see if the test is better or worse. And to me, it's clear that whatever they did with the HCU update or the core update when it hit us, their data said it was fine. Their quality raters said it was fine. Said it would be better. It would be 45%, 40% reduced in spam. And to me, that's clear that isn't the case. And it'd be interesting. Are they just going to keep changing the quality rater guidelines? But to me, it feels like Google got quite a lot of money. We saw that when we went to visit them. They got a big office.
They do.
Everyone. There's a lot of Teslas, a lot of Cybertrucks,
a lot of snacks.
A lot of snacks. They do well. I don't know if you know that, but if they wanted to, they could. If they can build a nuclear power plant to power their Gemini answer machine, they can put a little bit of money in to rate every good, decent keyword.
My argument though is, on the one hand, as you say, I don't think the quality rater guidelines work. I think if there's anything we know at this point is that they don't work.
Yeah.
Just because otherwise they wouldn't be so surprised that so many of us were destroyed and so many of us are still getting destroyed. So clearly it doesn't work. I think they need to improve that. But other than that, they spend this whole time, and I understand why, just trying to find these patterns that tell them that a site is bad. Yeah. That's what it is. So they've been trying to be like, oh, if it does this, then spam. If it does that, then spam. If it does that, it's like, how about we put all this AI power that we have to try to assess if the information on the page is good or bad? Because the beauty of, I think they're seeing information as data.
Yeah.
They're just saying, oh, we organize the worst information. It's like, no, sorry, you're looking at data. That's not the same. Because the data could tell you that users click on Forbes because they know Forbes, not on HouseFresh. And the information could tell you that Forbes is giving them rubbish and HouseFresh is giving them good information. And the argument that all SEOs are going to give you is the algorithm doesn't understand things. It doesn't know things. It won't know whether this air purifier is better than that air purifier. It doesn't know that. Although ChatGPT search does a pretty alright job. But the investment should go into trying, particularly now, like we're in a moment in history where we're moving to this era of this information where we just are, honestly, we're going into a world where we can't trust anything, which is the most manic place where we can be. Like you can't grow in a place where you can't trust. Like it could destroy us all mentally, really. And right now, the most important thing is making sure that the information is right. And they should be putting 100% of their time into that. And I can imagine it would be a lot of money. I can imagine it would piss off a lot of people. I can imagine that it would mean that they're probably are not gonna make this 5% or 10% profit or whatever that they are constantly striving to get quarter after quarter after quarter. Like that was normal. Like they normalized this making more money, which brings me to an interesting thing that we were told, where we were kind of having a conversation like this with one of the engineers, and we were talking about how these big media houses are just trying to make more money like this. So they check and say, what happens if we review like flasks? Oh, it works, it ranks. Okay, how about we do pens and notebooks and PC fans, and we do like jumpers for men? And they're just going after the money. And this engineer stopped us right there and said, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make more money. And we were like, okay, well, yeah, but if that's all you want to do, then isn't that like the clear example of when they say creating pages just for search? That's all we are doing, right? Or just chasing the money, whether that's the traffic or the sale But she just kept saying, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make more money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make more money. And that might be like a personal thing, that belief that she has. But it was quite telling that she felt she could put that on the table when we were talking about search results. We weren't talking about the values that people have in life. We were talking about search results. And if that's the mentality that Google is going into it, is there's nothing wrong with wanting to make more money.
Well, it's clear that they have that position. The fact is that the Forbes marketplaces of the world, they've not just started ranking last week. They've been ranking for many, many years. And whatever the Google engineers say, they can still use Google and they can still look at who's ranking for best CBD gummies or best home warranties. And it's been evidence. It's been jokes in the SEO industry for years that's all you need is these big sites. So obviously they don't have a problem with it. And I remember some of the initial feedback from some of the search liaisons was, well, they actually do a really good job of it. Because again, it was just a pinstripe evaluation. And I think that what comes back down to it is like, and that's what's so funny about the SEOs coming out and saying, oh, it's your ads, it's your UX, oh, it's these things. These are always very like things that you can see initially. Or if you're lucky, they might even run your website through one of the many tools and tell you all the error things. But what they won't do, and what even the search liaisons at the time when these sites were coming out, was actually have a look. And to me, I think that was the biggest thing from the event, is that yes, they are looking at it now because we created a problem for them. And I think one of the other feedback that we got when we did the initial article is, firstly, no one in SEO shared it. I don't know why. Luckily, people outside of it, the journalists, they did, but no one did. And yeah, what was I gonna?
I don't know, but I guess when I think about this idea of just trying to fix this problem, and I was talking to the engineers, and then there's one engineer, and he said he had been part of Google for 19 years. He's been working there. He traveled to Germany, and he had recently, and this is how he said it, joined this team to fix this problem. And it's an exciting problem, which is a very engineer thing to say. They love fixing problems. So as we were talking, and then suddenly I said to him, I joked and I said, well, you could fix this problem really easily if you just remove all the site reputation abuse websites. And he laughed and he said, yeah, that would be easy. And I learned that day that actually for the spam team to be able to add the site reputation abuse policy or like guideline, that was a battle that they had to fight.
Yeah.
Which seems crazy, right? Like making sure that sites like Forbes that have these third-party agreements with Forbes Marketplace, which is a company that is also running like the affiliate commissions of USA Today, and like for that they had to fight to prove that that was a problem. And I think there are people at Google who might still hold the vision that Google held for so long of what the mission that they had was, who might still believe that there is a responsibility for them not to be evil, who might still think that there is a responsibility that they have over the web, over information. I think there's definitely people in the company that still want that. The question is, where do they have the power to make any change?
Yeah.
And knowing that perhaps they don't, and I think up to this point, I always kind of erred on the side of, but they're Google, right? Like they care about the web, right? Like they would never want what's worse for the web,
well,
right?
You'd think it was in their interest because of
obviously
their
it's
search engine.
long-term.
If it's not good, people stop using it.
If there's no content, then what are they going to show? Like obviously, it wouldn't even factor into my brain that perhaps that wasn't the case. And I think now I look at the whole picture, I look at the world, and I think, how about we just expect the worst, prepare for the worst, get together, and start pointing out when things are not right. Because when we wrote that first article, and a lot of people spent days laughing at us and sending us emails trying to sell us their services and joking and giving us names. Like we had like names like for HouseFresh that are not actually HouseFresh, but people will hear them and know what it is because they talk about us that way in forums and in comments, and like it was worth it. It was worth it because we made some people very uncomfortable, and we pointed out something that others didn't want to even start talking about, because that would mean like if the results are broken, that would mean SEOs can't help you. Yeah. If Google has lost control of its algorithm, which is one of the things that have been said about a lot in the last few weeks, if that happened, then there is no technical SEO fix that is going to fix it. So there is a big, elephant in the room, and
I think if they don't fix the site reputation, then that is the future of SEO. Like if it is allowed that some sites can just abuse their current position to rank for anything, then there's no content creators, there's no people doing links, there's no nothing. All you need to do is, like Lars did it, it's just like find a top 1,000 website, post your content on there, and it's game over.
But that's not SEO though, is it?
That isn't SEO.
That's just business doing business. Like it's not even anymore at this point. It doesn't really matter anymore. And I think as creators, because obviously we find ourselves in this really, as we talked about at the beginning, like we have spent the vast majority of our careers within the SEO community, or working directly with SEOs, and it puts us in a really awkward position where you are. So when we had to come out and say, oh, Google is not ranking our website, which deserve to rank, we as content creators who create content for a living and have an agency where we work with SEOs to say like our content is going to do really well, having come out to be like our entire website full of our content is not doing well, that was incredibly detrimental and potentially negative to Neomam. For us to do that, there was nothing in our favor for us to do that. There was no reason for us to come out and say, actually, our website is gone, and we don't think that our content is unhelpful. But you have a look, like we just open ourselves up to losing all of our clients, to having people coming in doing just stealing our content. That was one of the big pieces of advice we received right away, was like, quickly grab your content, put in a new domain before somebody else does it and outranks you with your own content. But it was worth doing because we just grabbed this elephant in the room and we just said, look, it's here and let's have a look at it. And we also learned that day that we are content creators, that now there is this group, right? Up to that point, I think today they were talking on I think it was X or Blue Sky, somebody was saying, we can't call ourselves niche sites, even though we are, because we do stuff about air purifiers.
Any more niche than air purifiers?
I don't know. We do have some stuff on dehumidifiers, you could argue. But it's a niche site. But now we can't say that because niche sites has been taken by a section of the creating content for the web world, where the key is to try to rank as fast as possible and either like burn it or sell it. And exploit like whatever Google is very bad at. And so now we can't do that. And I think we try to bring these independent sites to the table, being like, look, we're independent. We're not bought by anybody. Everybody else is bought by somebody. We're not. We're supporting ourselves, which means that when something goes bad, it's our business. It's our small business that gets destroyed. Maybe independent sites is like too much. I think when Google gave this event, the web creators conversation, is like, okay, yeah, that's what I am. I get it now.
Yeah,
it took me like 20 years, but now I get it. I'm a web creator. That's what I do. I create content for the web. I care about it. I care about the web. I believe in the power of the web. I wouldn't be here without it. But I guess the best thing we can do is just stick together and help each other and tell our readers about what's happening. Like when we wrote that first article, we felt, we should publish it on Neomam's site, because at least people who read the Neomam site, they know about SEO, and how are the HouseFresh readers going to figure it out? And in the end, it was like, no, because we want them to know that they can't trust these other lists and that this is going on. And I think that really helped us make a point even clearer, because we were writing for our readers who are not people who understand how Google works.
No, and we got a ton of really good feedback as well. Like that's one of the things that, like actual just normal users emailing and trying to help. And I think that stuff is super useful. And that's kind of the same thing of what Google's trying to do with the creative. Is like, look, help us. We need that. Because sometimes maybe you're looking at something so close, you need external people to be like, look, have you thought about the fact that maybe they could have a few more than just one image? These things, which I get it, you can get focused on those things. But I think, yeah, the advice I would echo what other people have said, which is that you can't just focus on the web anymore. You put yourself at such a risk of losing everything that no business can work like that. It just can't happen. And I think one of the benefits of all this happening to us, which there were quite a few, the one thing was we always wanted to go into YouTube. We used YouTube to share sound tests, very boring videos, and it was a good source of placing and hosting videos. But it pushed us to go down that route of using YouTube. And I'm really liking it. I like the fact that, you can connect with people. Just, it all happens in the comments. You get so much more like feedback of what's working, what's not. You know exactly which second that people found it boring or which bit they didn't like. And people will happily tell you, and they don't like the music or they don't like the transitions, or no one said anything about me yet, but we'll sure get some more. But the point being is that you're there with them, and they want to join you on the journey. Like we've had subscribers who joined, months ago, who's still part of it. And it's like, how can, people used to say like, well, YouTube's not going to work for you guys. Like who cares about air purifiers? But the reality is everything is interesting if you go down deep enough. And I think I think that we kind of already scraped at that with some of the web stuff we were doing, but with Google, it is always a shot in the dark. Like, will I put this effort into this piece of content, and it may rank in a few months, and then it may not rank. And in comparison, YouTube is, you do a good video, you're going to know it's a good video in the first 24 hours.
And it's going to rank on Google.
And this is the key thing. It's going to rank. So one of the keywords that I brought to the engineers, and I'm going to keep talking about it until we get it, is best air purifier. It's the top keyword in our sector. We deserve it. We've done more tests than anyone else, whatever. We got that ranking when our site was decimated because we did a video, because I didn't make the mistake that I had previously, which again, maybe an SEO mindset that you need to drop off is like, I don't want to do best air purifiers because it's too competitive.
Well, we were told it's too competitive
an engineer at that event, which again, I want to know what they mean by competitiveness.
Yeah, let us compete.
Let us compete on an open plea, but with a best air purifiers for 2024 on YouTube, straight into position in ranking position. That page, that video has had around, 128,000 views since it went live, 4 or 5 months ago. Because it's a good video. And guess what? It's the same content, pretty much word for word. It's the same units, the same information that's on Google. So the question is why can YouTube take your information from the video and the transcription and understand, and yet Google Web is completely unable to do that? And I think Nate touched on it. It's all about compute and how much compute they're willing to give you. And right now, back in the day, search was the darling of their business. It still is. They should accept that. But it isn't getting the compute, the money, the people that it deserves. And people like Danny and the other engineers, I just want to say, like, they do want to help. But again, my concern, and I think they would be happy with that, is to understand is like, I don't know how much power they've got, and I don't know how much other people could change things.
No, but one of the things I've been saying since the beginning, whenever a creator would ask, we have a comment we have
yes,
to get back to. Yes,
I need to get back to.
About somebody saying, what have you done? What have you done? And what I had done is I just looked at the page of results and I was like, right, so what's ranking right now and where can I rank? And I think YouTube was one of them. It's like, well, there's always a slot for video. We just make the best video.
Yep.
Try to make the best video, go in there. And then there's always some images that get pulled. So we need images, unique images. And then actually in the images, every now and again, if you actually have a social media, like, I don't know, Instagram, or if you have TikTok, or if you have a Google, like a YouTube short, it gets pulled within the images. So if you were to think about it in the way in which for every video you create, there's actually a lot of micro content and, small shorts for YouTube shorts and shorts for Instagram and shorts for TikTok and images that you can use when you share something on, say, X or Facebook that are unique, that are just for those platforms. And you have the possibility of being present on Reddit, because now Google has this big section that's called forums and discussions, where most of the stuff that is being shared there is just subreddits. So we just looked at all that and we're like, right, so we're gonna make a subreddit, we're gonna have a YouTube channel, we're gonna have shorts, we're gonna have active social media, and we are going to time things. So instead of just going out and being like the big release of the one video and just go, poof, we just trickled it. So, and we make sure that every post counts. So if the algorithm is so broken that it's just going to pull anything that is fresh, make that be our stuff. If it's actually so broken that it's going to pull any subreddit, then let that be our subreddit, and so on. I think as a web creator, that's a great exercise to do. And I promise you, it's so much more fun to create video and to get into visuals and think of new things that are not just writing. I think writing is hard and it's also very personal. And when it doesn't work, you take it very personal. And if you just keep banging your head against that wall, you are going to end up closing your website and just doing something else and thinking that you failed. That's not fair on everything you know and everything you've done. And actually, if you could enjoy what you do a little bit more, I think that would be great. I think we spent 2 years, all of us, banging our heads against the wall and hating on things and not enjoying what we were doing. And that really is not going to help any of us. And personally, I have felt a lot better focusing on YouTube and focusing on the community and trying to figure it out, like, oh, in this absolute broken Google, it's a game. How can we show up? Because obviously it doesn't matter that we have the best information. So
because I think it's clear, and from our Search Console graph is like carrying on to, and Danny said this in the drinks after the meeting, just keep putting content out. It's going to not do anything. Your site has been marked with some sort of whatever you want to call it.
He didn't say that though. He didn't say the site has been
No,
marked.
he didn't. No,
He
but
just
I'm
said,
saying that from me.
do something else.
He's doing
in the
something
meantime.
else in the meantime, which I think is advice that I would also agree with, and that's what we did when it happened to us. Obviously, yes, we had a design that was already in. We were already working on, so we just rolled that design out. We made some minor tweaks, like silly things like dates, affiliate disclosures, stuff that most people would recommend to like look at. But honestly, I have to be honest that I don't think any of that did anything. I think the fact was that the algorithm needed to be fixed
or debugged, which is like that's the thing that they are doing. That's why sharing examples is good, because they can go and look at them, and if there's a bug, they fix it.
Because it's all machine learning. That's what they've moved to whenever the big change happened in Google search, and it moved to this new process that isn't what it used to be, and they can't just fix, which I think it was one of the guys who left was worried about that. So it's happened. But I think, yeah, focusing, we just, from then on, it was on YouTube, and it was like, I've bought all of these air purifiers.
Yeah.
I'm not just giving up. Like, I feel like I owe it to the units that I've bought, the money I've spent on them. And I know it's good. And I think losing all your search traffic, I've spoken to other people, it's like, it is quite freeing.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, right, I'm not having to hold on to the last bit of it's like, it's gone. So do it how you want to do it now. And I think for us, yeah, YouTube first, because YouTube is there is an audience there, and it is, we know, and other people will say, and maybe it will get worse, which as things
it's owned
do.
by Google. So.
It's owned by Google and all the rest of it. But right now, and our experience with the short experience we've had since focusing on it, is they do want new voices. They do want new creators. You do get visibility, and you can see that in our graph. Like it's been going up how we'd want our search to be. And this is, compared to search, it's not so good. And so now I'm like, well, that's the future. That's the future for HouseFresh. I know that we can talk to people, we can connect with them a lot better through this format than we can with the video, with the web. We will still want to do stuff with the web, because there's only so much you can do in a video, just have information.
No, and then it's finding out, like we have a way of doing it,
or tools or what have you.
Yeah, like there's more information on the site. So a YouTube video where we don't make a 2-hour review, we might make a 10-minute review. And then on the site, you are going to have a lot more in-depth information. You have all the charts, the graphs, you can compare with other units. You can do all these other things. And in a video, there's only so much you can do. So that also means that it takes us a lot longer to publish content on the site, because also there's only 3 of us, like 3.5, with Mauro being then part-time. So we just focus our energy. But I wanted to say something for the people who are not creators and who are not SEOs and who might be subscribers, or people who just found this somehow and are listening to this right now. we got so many emails, and we keep getting so many emails from people who have just read the first few articles, or who have maybe seen some of the videos of the YouTubers that have been covering it, or read some of the articles of the journalists that have been covering what's happening. And they're all very angry, and they are all just trying to help and say, what can we do to help? And my number one answer to that is just stop using Google. And I know it seems like this massive commitment somehow, because up to this point, Google has become, it has become the web. And you might even have this idea that if you are logged in, then your results are better. And actually, if you are inside of Chrome, then it's actually even better. And because I think at some point maybe it was the case, and maybe personalization kind of plays into it or whatever. But the truth is, it's just a tool. It's just a search engine. And I personally changed to DuckDuckGo in January. And I have not looked back. Like, I just changed my default. So I don't even have to think about it. I don't have to go duckduckgo.com or whatever. Like, I just change on my phone and on my laptop and on my desktop computer. That's just my default is DuckDuckGo. And I just search in there. And for like 98% of the searches, it's fine. It's exactly what I need. It gives me the answer of what ingredient this thing is, or where, in what year did this happen, or where was this city, where whatever, or whatever general searches that I do every day. And in the cases where it doesn't, I go to Google, which I now figured out. At the beginning, I used to just like hover between that and Kagi and this and that. And now I just like, fine, I get it. Like, Google has this freshness built into it.
They just have massive servers.
They have massive servers. They obviously have agreements with all the publishers as well. So if you want to know, like, oh, there's been a tsunami in some place and you want to know about it, now that we can't go on X because it's rubbish, as we used to go to Twitter to find this stuff.
Call it Twitter.
Okay, Twitter. Okay, Twitter. Anyway, those type of things, I would go on Google and just find the news there or whatever it is, because it's freshest news from right now. Or I go on Google when I want to find how Google is showing something, because I want to know what's happening with some page of ours that we made or a video. Or I go on Google to find things when a website, maybe it's, I don't know, our site is getting a lot of traffic to some page and I want to find out specifically or whatever. Or to find images that maybe on DuckDuckGo I don't get. So I do go there. Do I have to be logged in to do that? No. Do I have to give them all my data? No. Do I have to have as a default on my phone to do that? No. But you know what I do find, and what happens every single day? I visit websites. I go to websites. I don't just get Google to tell me what time it is in Mountain View, California. I just go on a website and then I check it in there. And the same with everything else, because Google had made it so that we are just stalking Google. And we're not just stalking Google, we're stuck at the top of Google. We're not even scrolling anymore. And now with AI overviews, I'm making it even worse, where you're just meant to be there. You're not meant to come down here. Down here is horrible. It's full of ads. It's annoying, actually. Up here, you get the answer. And the only thing we can do to find all these sites that are now still in a box is to go hunt for them. And I promise you, if you use DuckDuckGo, if you use Bing, if you use Brave, if you use Kagi, you'll find them. You're going to find all these sites that right now are not even showing up on Google search, because Google decided somehow that they were not helpful. And they labeled them spam, and they gave them some form of site-wide classifier that doesn't exist, but obviously it's there. And as a user, the most powerful thing you can do to help all of us is just get out of Google. And I know it's a huge, big thing to ask. I learned about the term enshittification when it became Word of the Year, like a couple of years ago, which is this idea of like platforms on the web, they start being great for users, and then they turn around on the users and they kind of start messing you about to help the businesses that they actually do business with. And then eventually they turn on the businesses to try to get all the value for themselves. And then eventually they die. And when all this thing happened with Google, and I got into reading more about like just the future of the web and what the open web could be and the problems that there are, and I read it quite a lot, and I watched a lot of videos and talks from Cory Doctorow about enshittification. And I reached out to him and I said, like, if everybody's so upset, why are people not just just changing? Why don't they just go and stop using Google? And he said to me that he felt like we were closer than ever. Like right now, it feels like change is in the air. But that there is such a thing as switching costs. And actually, you know, with something like Facebook, for example, like if you made your Facebook account when you were in university and you have all your friends from university and everybody you used to hang out with at the time on Facebook, and then over time you kind of start adding your neighbors, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I closed my Facebook and I just lost contact with all these people, and that's how they have you. That's your switching costs. They have you by the contacts. But when it comes...
And Google's was that they were the best search engine.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the switching cost. And I'm here to tell you they're not. And the reality is if they're ever going to change, if there's ever going to be like a, you know, at the top of Google to decide, yes, we need to go back and actually fix this thing, it's only going to happen when they lose their 90+% market share of search. And that isn't going to happen if all of us keep going back to Google, keep searching on it, because they've got no incentive.
No, because
the
also
incentive is just how do we make more money from the current
and they
crop
keep
of
saying
searches.
the same, which is the data shows, and you are the data. We are the data if we're using Google. So they are using your behavior to justify destroying small businesses, amongst all the other things that they are doing. But because switching costs are a thing, we actually created a tool that is called openwebengine.com, where you can perform a search and then it just randomly sends you to other search engines just so that you can see what it's like.
Yeah.
You can also select if you want to go to specific ones, but the whole idea is just to try to show people like search engines are a tool and they are all fairly the same. The only one that is completely destroyed right now is Google, which is Yahoo 2000 level of bad. And unless all of us make a stand and actually show with our action that we don't think it's good enough, I don't think anything's going to change. But other than that, if you actually want to help all the small independent web creators that are now being nowhere to be found on Google, a great place to start is just going to another search engine, because they are all still ranking at the top of all the other search engines with their amazing content that they spend months working on. So yeah, just wanted to say that.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Gisele, for joining me behind the camera for once. Obviously, this is the first time we've done this format. I think it was just, we thought it'd be useful to, well, like you say, we don't want to write a blog post, so anyone will see it. So might as well do a video. Now, if you have, as always, any questions about the things that we've talked about in this fairly long episode, and if you think that you want to see more of this, let me know. If not, you'll never see it again. You'll just get
you'll never see me again.
Normal air purifier reviews and best guides. But yeah, hopefully, thanks for getting through to the end. And
yeah, and just have a nice day. Have fun.